Hi, I'm Hannah. I study at the University of Leiden in the Netherlands, and I was thinking that nowadays there's not a lot of public trust anymore in the European Union, and that's why populist movements in Europe are rising. And I would like to know what can you suggest us citizens to do to downsize these populist movements in Europe?
Let's start with Marietje Schaake. So what would you say to Hannah? How can citizens in particular help to tackle the influence of these populist movements?
Well, let me start by saying that I understand how disappointed so many young people are in a political class that has made many mistakes, that has actually neglected to show leadership in responsible government financing and in looking also to the impact of today's policies for the next generation. So I understand the disappointment. But I also think that then, while being disappointed, there are a few choices. You can say, I'm going to disagree with everything. I'm only going to say what is not working well, which is what a lot of these populist parties on the left and on the right are doing. They're suggesting that building a wall or a border or a fence around every country is going to provide for the solutions. But I have not seen any success from that kind of political agenda. Instead, I think that while we have major challenges, we are more interdependent than ever, globally and also in Europe. And in fact, I think some of the problems we have seen is for a lack of cooperation between the member states of the EU, a lack of appreciation of what happens in one place impacts another place. The youth unemployment in Southern Europe impacts all of Europe. It is not a Spanish, a Greek, or a Portuguese, Italian problem only. It's a lost generation is a problem for all of us. And so what I think is necessary is also for young people to participate in political decision making, to be a part of the changes they want to see within political parties, through civil society organizations, through other kinds of activism, but really the voices and the ideas and the solutions should also come for the generation that we're talking about. It cannot be that there's a complete disconnect between political leaders deciding over the heads of young people. And so that has been my approach, trying to bring young people on board, trying to use innovative ways, fostering entrepreneurship, for example, in these difficult times, showing in a transparent way what we are doing here on the European level to, in a modest way, try to rebuild that trust and engage young people in steps forward in these difficult times for everybody.
Okay, Maria, Greece is one of the countries where the mainstream political parties have perhaps most dramatically seen a drop in support. And Hannah's question assumes that this is a bad thing and needs to be countered. Is it a bad thing? What would you say to Hannah?
Greece is also the only country where the neo-Nazist party increased so much. Now it is the third party in the Greek parliament, so it's really very serious. And I think that we have experienced this with very bad feelings. And then I have to say that the response to that of the society in general is a very big mobilization in solidarity movements during the crisis, before the refugees. I speak about the last 5 years. So we saw, I think that political, socially, a response is that there has been a lot of groups for solidarity, social medical centers, soup kitchens everywhere, and a lot of groups. So this was a response of the society, I think, against the rise of the neo-Nazist party in Greece the last 5 years with the crisis. And I think this is the way, let's say, to challenge this politically and socially through solidarity movements, through enhancing and deepening the democratic institutions. And this is so. I think that in this sense, the collapse of the big major parties, I think, is not a bad thing, because it shows that the way they were functioning was a little bit not so maybe democratic and so on. They had lost the contact with the people. And that's why Syriza, the radical left, has such a big success. For me, the response to that is socially and politically deepening of the contacts and the links in the society. And this solidarity movement that we saw experienced a lot of offers, volunteer work by everybody, is something new for the Greek society, and it will help for preventing or reducing the bad consequences towards the extreme right wing as we experienced.
Okay, and László Andor, finally, what would you say to Hannah?
Yes, I agree with Maria that sometimes more influence from populist forces is not necessarily bad. It should be a wake-up call. It signals that the mainstream parties did not find solutions in time. The problem, on the other hand, with populism is that they are more open to look for scapegoats rather than actual solutions. And whether it's the Greeks or whether it's the Germans, whether it's the immigrants, but the scapegoat is always there, which is not necessarily constructive. And at the time of the crisis, and especially when we have a refugee crisis, the immigrant is the most obvious scapegoat, and this is probably the most dangerous phenomenon when various people, with or without information, try to find a solution by excluding immigrants, by putting them into inhuman conditions. This is, of course, very much unacceptable. Now, there was another aspect of the question, which was the problem of the alienation. That it's not only that populist parties benefit from the crisis or the failure of mainstream political forces, but one of the consequences is that a lot of people, especially young people, become alienated from the electoral process and the political system. I think the right answer to that is engagement. Political leaders, officials, including the EU institutions, have to engage with civil society, with social partners, with local organizations, youth movements like the Indignados and many others, and include them in the dialogue and a constructive search of better solutions.